Hi, this is Andrea Hendricks. Let's look at how we can use the graphing calculator to graph circles and horizontal parabolas. The key for using the calculator is that your equation must be solved for y. Remember that these are not functions we're dealing with, and so for every input of x there's going to be two output values. And so you're going to have to enter the two separate pieces to this equation in the calculator. And that comes from the fact that remove a square, we have to apply the square root property, and in doing that we get a plus or minus square root of something. And one other important note, you're going to view the circles best when you see or are in the z decimal window. So let's look at an example of x squared plus y squared is equal to 9. To enter this on the calculator, I would have to, by hand, solve for y. So I would first start by saying y squared is equal to 9 minus x squared. Now to remove the square, I'm going to have to say y is equal to plus or minus the square root of 9 minus x squared. Now please do not try to simplify that and say that's 3 minus x, right? I can only reduce things that have a factor of 2, not or happen to be square terms. I can't do the square root to the 9 and the square root to the x squared. That doesn't work. It has to be a product inside for me to simplify it. So I would have to enter in y1 the square root of 9 minus x squared, and in y2 the negative square root of 9 minus x squared. And then I've put the calculator in the z decimal mode. So if you go to view, and then I'm sorry, not view, what am I saying, zoom, and then z decimal, you'll get this graph. Okay, so what happens is the square root of 9 minus x squared gives us this upper semicircle, and then the negative gives us the lower half of the semicircle, or the circle. Now x minus 3 squared plus y plus 1 squared equals 16. We know that's a circle that has center 3, negative 1 with a radius of 4. But to have the calculator graph that for us, we would have to solve for y. So let me go through the steps with you just so you can see how I arrived at what's entered on that screen. So I would first have to take the x minus 3 squared to the right side, and I would do that by subtracting that whole quantity. Don't worry about trying to square that out or anything. Then I have to remove the square, so I have to apply the square root to get y plus 1 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 16 minus x minus 3 squared. Again, I don't have a product, so I cannot simplify that radical. My last step is to bring over the negative 1, so we would have negative 1 plus or minus 16 minus the quantity x minus 3 squared. And then I would have to break those up using the plus or the minus. Now because my window was not within, when I did the zoom and z decimal, my circle was kind of off the screen. So you can do multiples of that. The standard z decimal goes from negative 4.7 to 4.7 in the x direction, and negative 3.1 to 3.1 in the y direction. So as long as you do multiples of those, then you're going to see a circle pretty well. You could use the standard window, but what's going to happen is your circle is going to look like more of an ellipse or an oval instead of a circle because of that relationship between the x and the y values. Okay, so all I did was a multiple of 2. I multiplied each of those values by 2 to get an appropriate window to view everything. Okay. And then lastly, we have a horizontal parabola. X is equal to y minus 2 squared minus 6. So again, I have to solve for y. So to have y minus 2 squared is equal to x plus 6. And to remove the square, I'm going to have to take the square root by doing plus or minus the square root of x plus 6. And so my last step is to add the 2. So I'd really have 2 plus the square root of x plus 6 and 2 minus the square root of x plus 6, and that's where I get the horizontal parabola. So if you looked at like this axis of symmetry through y is equal to 2, the upper half is the 2 plus the square root of x plus 6, and the lower half would be 2 minus that. Okay, so if you have any questions on how to use the calculator, it's probably more on how to solve that expression for y. But I can help you, so just feel free to contact me. Thank you.